So this is the first in our chat with the Chief Executive interviews, and I'm happy to welcome Mark Munro, the Chief Executive of Scottish Athletics. Mark, before lockdown, tell me the state of Scottish Athletics. How were things going?
Things are going fantastically well, Rhona. And first of all, thanks for having me on today. If I look across the sport at all levels, so it's not just about athletes performing at a global stage. Over the last 5 or 6 years, we've seen a continual growth in numbers across events. We've seen really strong growth in clubs, growth in Scottish Athletics membership. 27 Scottish records in indoor season across all age groups. And you're sitting there going, right, we're teeing ourselves up going into what should have been Olympic year in a really great position, a real buzz around the sport. And then to have the situation we now face is obviously devastating. But I think you have to contextualise that, Rhona, and the way I look at it is fairly pragmatic. We are in the situation we're in. The world is in the same situation. It's not just about sport. I mean, if you read about it every evening, there are more people dying because of the coronavirus. And when there's people out there dying and businesses are worried about, keeping staff on after the furlough scheme and everything that's going on in the world, I think you have to be quite pragmatic.
Do you have any concerns that through this period, through this phase, that there will be a drop-off at all at grassroots level?
Yeah, undoubtedly, and we're seeing that evidence already. Our membership figures have probably dropped over the last couple of months, somewhere between 40 to 50%, and membership of clubs is stagnated, I guess. In respect of our affiliated clubs and their membership, they will have missed out on a proportion of new young members coming into the sport. We're going to miss a whole summer and spring, I guess, if you take the Easter period in. We would have athletics camps and introductory sessions. We've got schools athletics, tends to take place between the Easter break and then the summer holidays. On the plus side, you just have to walk outside into the street and walk around for 10 minutes and you see people walking more, you see them jogging more, you see them running more, cycling more. And there's certain activities, and we're obviously one of those in terms of athletics and running, where we must benefit. So I do see a campaign as we come out of lockdown and when we can start to get some kind of club and group activity together where we're trying to introduce or reintroduce people back into athletics. Just as important, if not more important, is how do we retain our existing members? We talk a lot about recruiting, but actually it's easier to retain people in the sport than it is to go and recruit new people. So what I like is clubs are really communicating well. They're providing opportunities to engage with their membership through this lockdown, putting things on, whether it's virtual events, whether it's quiz nights, whether it's just virtual challenges, whether it's coaching tips. Really, really pleasing to see. We're trying to innovate as well. The virtual events have been really successful. There was I think it was almost 2,200 athletes signed up for the virtual mile last weekend. Our development team are working really hard around clubs. So we have contracted external experts to help our clubs through this period, whether that's around club planning, whether it's the financial elements, whether it's legal advice. So all that's been put in place for the clubs. We're developing distance learning. So I see some of the positives in this.
What is athletics actually going to look like? It looks like it's still a long way away before we get back to what we would have said before was normal.
We looked at the kind of key phases as we may come out of lockdown based on what other countries have been doing and what the Scottish Government have told us so far. And you're right, it's probably quite a long way off in terms of back to normal, with clubs operating with 700 people around the track during the week and things like that. So you start to look at this and say, right, well, running's a little bit more straightforward than most activities because just now people are able to run by themselves or with people in their household. What I think will happen with running is if the lockdown is eased, you'll probably be able to add one person to your bubble, if I can call it that. So athletes potentially may be able to run with somebody else while still social distancing. Be able to start training with a coach potentially. I use that kind of lightly, please, just now, because until we know for sure on the guidance, and there's the medical element to go around that. And then as that bubble is increased, I think we can start to see small training groups starting to get together, possibly in a month's time. And maybe I'm being a bit over kind of positive. And that's all outdoors. Indoor facilities is going to be a challenge for us. I think they may, and again, whether they open tracks where they can. I think tracks where you can access easy through a gate will be open first. I think tracks that have the infrastructure of a large facility and you have to go through the facility to a track may be a little bit more of a challenge for us. And I know we are having conversations with a number of local authorities who are keen to, but we're all being very cautious about that. Where we are going to struggle just now is our strength and conditioning, gyms, and some of our technical events. So high jumpers jumping onto a mat, for example, you can't possibly wipe down a mat every time just now, and we don't know what you have to do to clean the mat. So there's a lot of unanswered questions that we're going to have to seek medical advice, and it's probably good that Ireland are a month or so ahead and England have jumped a few weeks ahead now. That gives us some frustrations on the one hand, but I'm also going to get to look down and see, well, what are you doing and what's working and what's not working? So we have to look at that. I think there's opportunities for performance athletes to return to facilities, possibly before community sport. And I do believe that with small groups of performance athletes, there's an opportunity to trial and make sure we can start to open up facilities to the wider communities and learn from the work we have to do with performance athletes. We have to remember that performance athletes, it's their job. So they're not working just now. They're attempting to train in whatever form they can. Event-wise, we've already moved our track and field championships back to September. I would say they're 50-50 just now. And I actually had a very good meeting a couple of days ago with the Road and Cross Commission, some members looking at cross-country running and our championships from October through the winter. And we looked at all the different scenarios within that. So the first scenario was everything's great by October, we can carry on with our events. Now, that's probably unlikely as well, if we're honest with you, and we have to scenario plan. We then looked at, well, what can we then do? Can we set people off in small groups, or can we set individuals off staggered starts? Can we bring in small numbers of groups for certain time slots and then they compete and they have to go away? What are the consequences for families? How do we manage that element? So we're now starting to go through this process of planning all the way through all the different elements. And of course, athletics requires lots of officials, technical officials, to put on kind of championship events. So we have started talking about, we obviously developed the virtual series of events, which have been really popular. We've then started talking about this kind of together apart, which is Ali Love's brainchild. I have to give him the credit, our events manager. And that really is when you can start to get small groups together on tracks or in parks. What we could do is start to have competition online. And it's a bit like that we've seen the pole vaulters recently, so hand timed, we could have measured distances by tape. So it's going back to the old ways. Some would argue the more reliable ways, but hand timing, measured with tapes, whatever it takes. It's a bit of fun, but it stimulates a little bit of competition amongst athletes. And clubs can do that at a kind of grassroots level as well within the club itself. You also don't want to rush people back to athletics or any sport at performance level as well, because athletes haven't been training properly. Some of them might think they have been doing a good job of it, but actually, as you know, you've been there and done that before, Rhona. To come back and be prepared to compete in a championship, you have to have that block behind you in that 8, 10, 12 weeks lead-in time and all the events in between. So I think it would be inappropriate of Scottish Athletics and even some of the global events will be interesting to see how they tackle this. I think it's highly inappropriate of us to rush athletes back to full competition. So if we get to a point where we might have an opportunity to host the Scottish Championships, but there's restrictions in place, then it won't be a Scottish Championship. It'll be a Scottish Open or a Scottish Challenge, and we may split up the event groups and deliver them in different venues.
Is the key, Mark, would you say, a vaccine? Because while there's no vaccine, then the 2 metre social distancing, one would assume, has to exist. And if we look at an athletics track, 2 metres is not even one lane apart. It's really 2 lanes.
It's 2 lanes apart, yeah.
2 lanes apart. And as you've already said, then you're down to races, 8-lane track. How many people can you put on an 8-lane track? You're down to 3. Yeah. So is that the situation that has to exist until a vaccine is found?
Yeah, ultimately, I think for the whole world, until a vaccine's found, then there's no normal. I can't see full track and field events back till the turn of the year, if I'm honest with you, at this point in time. I think we can still have track and field, but I don't think we'll have it as we would know it typically. I think there will still be restrictions in place on how we deliver that. I'll go back to the fact that safety is paramount. and we don't want to put risk on anybody at any point during this kind of process.
Would it be too strong to say, Mark, that regrettably 2020 is a write-off as far as athletics is concerned?
I wouldn't go that far, because I think even the work that's going on at a club level, there's coaches working hard with athletes to advise them and guide them just now. We've got virtual competitions. There's lots of education going on in the background. But again, we have a responsibility for the whole sport. So not to be able to deliver a Scottish 4 and 6 stage road relay championships, late March, not to be able to deliver the road series through the summer with thousands of athletes participating, potentially to not have a track and field championships at the end of the season, and then for potentially cross country to be affected. That is devastating. I'll keep using that word, because that is in a traditional normal athletics sense, that it's terrible. But we have to look at this differently and say, right, we know where we're at. The whole world is in exactly the same position as us. Let's make the best of the situation we're in as we come out of this, and let's be creative. Let's get our thoughts together about, well, what can we actually do beyond, the lockdown phases? Because I think virtual racing will now stay. To have over 2,000 members participating in a mile on their Garmins or Stravas, whatever it is incredible. Until we know what we need to do, there's still a little bit of kind of finger in the air, right? What does that mean? But our team are working on the exit strategy every day, in some form, whether that's guides for athletes, guides for clubs, guides for coaches, technical officials, event organisers. So we're continually working on that all the time and refining it as we go, and watching. You've got one eye down south or across, and then you've got one eye on obviously the Scottish Government advice, which is the advice we have to abide by. So yeah, it's not an easy time. It's a stressful situation for everyone, but I don't see any point in getting stressed about it. We need to be logical about how we work through this.
Great stuff. Well, thank you very much, Mark, for talking to me today. Our first chat with the Chief Executive, and like to wish you and Scottish Athletics all the best as you emerge from lockdown. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rhona. All the best.